Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in August. So it turns out that August was actually a pretty great month for me reading wise. I read technically 9 books. I think it's going to be 10. I'm reading a book at the moment and I think I'm going to finish it either today or tomorrow. It's Sunday and this video is going up on Monday. But yeah, I didn't give any books 1 or 2 stars, which is obviously great. I think I'm getting a little bit better at predicting whether I'm going to love a book or not. So of the books that I've read so far, I gave 2 of them 3 stars. 4 of them 4 stars and 3 of them 5 stars. I'll put it up on the screen just so that you can see. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And the book that I'm reading at the moment I think is also going to be a 4, maybe even a 5 star. Like I said, I'm hoping to finish it either today or tomorrow. So the first book I read in August was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and I actually read this as an ARC. I got an advanced copy through Netgalley and I was really looking forward to reading it because it sounded really interesting. So the book tells the story of our main character Nora, who finds herself in this place called the Midnight Library. This is basically a space in between life and death where every single book tells a story of what your life might have been like if you'd made a different decision. For example, if you'd chosen a different career or you'd married your ex-partner instead of breaking up with them, things like that. It deals with some quite difficult topics like suicide and mental health. However, I thought the writing was beautiful and I thought that the way that it was handled was done really sensitively. I think what I liked most about this book was the way that it made me think about my own life and the decisions that I've made and how maybe things could have turned out differently. And as I've said before, I really love a book that can make me think. So the second book I read in August was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Now, I couldn't actually remember when I'd read this. I wasn't sure if it was last month or this month. Turns out it was this month. This is a story about a girl called Blue who meets these Raven Boys, and Blue comes from a family of psychics, even though she's not psychic herself, and for her whole life she's been told that if she kisses her true love then it will cause them to die. And she's always avoided boys. However, she then meets these Raven Boys that go to the local private school, and they are on this quest to try and uncover a lost king that's supposedly hidden within their town, and she finds herself becoming mixed up in their world. And it's a very slow moving story. It focuses quite a lot on the relationships between the characters and developing their personalities, and it wasn't quite what I was expecting. I think I was expecting a little bit more action, and so I did give it 3 stars. However, I have got the second book out of the library and I'm planning to read it in September. Hopefully I'll enjoy it a little bit more now that I know the characters and I know more about the tone of the book, so I'm going to be interested to see what I think of that. So the next book that I read in August was The Places I've Cried in Public by Bourne. Now, I've mentioned this quite a few times on my channel already, so I won't go into too much detail, but this is a young adult contemporary and it follows a girl called Amelie who has recently gone through a breakup with her boyfriend Reese, and as she starts to reflect on the relationship she realises that it was quite unhealthy and that he was very emotionally abusive towards her. I gave this 5 stars because I thought it was really, really well written, and I think that Bourne is such a great writer. I really want to read some more of her books. So the next book I read in August was The Switch by Beth O'Leary, and I was surprised by how much I loved this book. I think I gave it 4 stars in the end. It basically tells the story of a girl called Lena who is 29 and living in London, and she decides to swap lives with her grandma Eileen, who is 79 and lives in Yorkshire. So Lena goes up to Yorkshire to live in her grandma's village, while her grandma Eileen goes down to London and stays in Lena's flat and has a go at online dating, which has some interesting consequences. What I like about Beth O'Leary's books is that even though they are quite light and they're the kind of books that you can read on the beach, they also have a lot of depth to them. For example, in The Switch, Lena's sister passed away the year before, and so she's still dealing with grief and she has quite a difficult relationship with her mum that we follow within the story. So the next book I read was The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. Now, this is a psychological thriller and it follows a group of friends who have pretty much known each other since university, and they decide to go away for New Year to this remote hunting lodge in the middle of Scotland, and one of them turns up dead. So it's basically a murder mystery and it flicks around all of the different perspectives, so we get to know each character. Throughout the book we don't actually find out until quite near the end who has been murdered or who the murderer was. So I feel like this is one of those thrillers where I enjoyed it while I was reading. It was fine, I was on holiday and I wanted something that was relatively quick to speed through. However, when I actually sit and look back on it, considering that I only read it a few weeks ago, I can't actually remember much about it. I think that if you read a lot of thrillers, then you'll probably be disappointed. The thing is that I actually quite like Lucy Foley's writing. I think that she's very good at creating suspense. However, I did find The Hunting Party was a little bit predictable, and it was full of characters that I just did not like. But yeah, I gave this 3 stars, and I think I was being a little bit generous. The next book I read was All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, and I actually listened to this as an audiobook, and it's narrated by the author, which I really like. This is a young adult memoir where George basically talks about his life growing up as a queer black boy from his childhood through his adolescence and into his university years. I find it really difficult in general to rate and review memoirs and biographies because I believe that everyone has a story inside of them, and it's not really for me as a reader to comment on someone's life because everyone's story is completely valid. What I will say is that I would recommend the audiobook for this. I found it really emotional. It covers topics such as gender identity and toxic masculinity. There were certain chapters where I could really feel the emotion, especially when he was talking about his family. And I think that because it was narrated by the author, it meant that you got a real sense of what his life was like. So the next 3 books that I read were actually part of a series, and they were A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, and A Court of Wings and Ruin. Have I said those right? This is basically a new adult fantasy series that follows a girl called Feyre who is out hunting in the woods by her house one day when she kills a wolf. However, it turns out that this wolf is actually a fairy, and so as punishment, she is forced to go and live in the fairy kingdom in this court where she meets all of these different fairies, and she begins to learn about their internal politics. There's not really much more I can say without spoilers, but I did make a whole video on this. If you want to check it out, I'll leave it linked somewhere up here. But I liked the first book. I gave it 4 stars. However, I don't think I really started to truly enjoy it until the last kind of 40%. It's definitely one of those books that got better as it went on. However, the ending interested me enough that I went out straight away and I bought the next book in the series. And a few people had told me that the second book in the series is better than the first. However, I was not prepared. I actually think that A Court of Mist and Fury is my all-time favourite book that I have read this year, if not one of my all-time favourite books of all time. What I really loved was the tension and the way that it built up the relationships gradually between the characters. I liked the friendships. I liked all of the new characters that were introduced that weren't in the first book. I loved the ending and how it broke me and how I finished it at 12:30 in the morning and I just sat there for about half an hour crying because I didn't know how to feel. What I will say is that when I got to A Court of Wings and Ruin, I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. However, there were a few issues that I had that I won't go into because spoilers, but I'm really interested to read the 4th book, which is a novella, and then the 5th book, which comes out in January. So the final book I'm going to talk about is my current read that I haven't technically finished yet, so I won't give a full review, but I'm pretty sure I'll finish it today or tomorrow, so it will be part of my August reading, and that is After the Silence by Louise O'Neill. This is a really difficult book to explain. It's basically set on a small island off the coast of Ireland where 10 years ago a young woman was found dead after a party. However, no one was ever charged with her murder, even though there was a storm that night and there's no way that anyone could have got on or off the island. So the book is set in the present day where an Australian film crew have just arrived on the island and are creating a documentary about what happened. Most of the book is told from the perspective of a woman called Keelan, and it was at her party where this young woman was found dead, and everyone within the community always suspected that it was her husband that was responsible, even though they always denied that they had anything to do with it. From the summary, I was expecting this to be a murder mystery, and even though there is that element to the story, what I've actually found is that this is more of a domestic drama. One of the main themes is domestic violence and domestic abuse, and I think it's really important to know that before going into the book. Like I said though, I haven't actually finished this book yet, so I don't think it's fair for me to give a full review. However, what I'll do is I'll pop something up on my Instagram, so if you follow me on there, then look out for that. Okay, so that's all of the books that I read in August. I'm not sure what to expect with September. I've got quite a chunky TBR, so wish me luck. But if you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!